Should we go ahead and get started, folks?
Yeah.
Introduce ourselves. Well, welcome everyone to our COP information session. We're super excited that you're interested in this opportunity and want to welcome you. This will be recorded. So if you want to reference what's said or come back to it, we'll be actually, I think, putting it up on our landing page for the COP program. I am Kristen Poppleton. I'm the Senior Director of Programs, and I will be one of the leaders of our delegation this year. And I use she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Minneapolis. Well, I'm coming to you from St. Paul, Minnesota, but our office is in Minneapolis. Lauren.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren Baritsky-Smith. I am the Communications and Marketing Manager here at Climate Generation. And I'm also one of the leaders of the COP delegation and excited to walk through specifics of this year's COP and what our delegation will look like. And then we'll have time for questions as well. And I'll pass it on to Sarah.
Hi, good morning. Sorry, we are keeping folks muted for now until the end of the info session for Q&A. So I was also muted. And I'm Sarah Goodspeed. I'm our Youth and Policy Manager at Climate Generation. I attended COP last year, or I guess 2 years ago was the last COP. I see some participants here who have also previously attended COP. I invite everyone to introduce yourselves in the chat. And I will send it back to Kristen to get us going.
I think Lauren's getting us going today.
Yeah, sure, I can kick us off. So just to give kind of a brief tone set and an introduction to COP. COP was supposed to happen last year, and then obviously because of the pandemic was delayed to this year. But the presidency of COP is being hosted by both the UK and Italy. So we just kind of put these quotes in here to ground from the two presidents of COP on the importance of this year. I won't read them aloud, but yeah, this is just a really important year to make progress and highlight the different sectors of climate action. And we're really excited to do that with our delegation. So for those of you who have not engaged with Climate Generation before, even though I do see a lot of familiar faces, Climate Generation, A Will Steer Your Legacy, empowers individuals and their communities to engage in solutions to climate change. And we do this with several different audiences across our program areas. We work with high school youth in a mentorship program. We help educators teach climate change in the classroom and have professional development opportunities for them to connect with each other and learn about effective climate change education. We also engage with just general communities across Minnesota and beyond with climate change storytelling. And then also working with influentials and prominent people in our Minnesota community and beyond to make change at larger levels. So we're really excited to launch our window into COP26 program, or what we like to say, International Climate Policy for Everyone. Through this program, we send out blasts or email digests while the COP is happening to keep people updated on what's going on no matter where they are. And we do that in a way that really distills a lot of the climate policy that's happening on the ground into a narrative that people can understand and focus on different aspects throughout. So Climate Generation has been sending delegations to COP since 2009 in Copenhagen, which is the picture up on the left-hand corner, when we used to be the Will Steger Foundation. And since then, we have focused on different groups every time that we've sent delegations, whether that's teachers, that's down on the left, or business, corporations, youth, indigenous populations. We've kind of taken the standpoint that all sectors are important for climate action, and so highlighting their different voices and what's happening on the ground is really key for helping overcome disinformation and highlighting those voices. So I'm excited to pass it on to Kristen, and she's going to give a little bit more of a deep dive into COP this year specifically and what that looks like.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Just to build a little bit on what Lauren said as well, as far as how she phrased this as international climate policy for everyone, we really think deliberately about how we can make these super high level wonky policy events something that everyone can understand, everyone knows how to participate in, and everyone understands how it connects to them, even though it seems super far off and distinct. And that's a little bit different, I think, from where you see COP coverage around the world. It tends to focus really on some really important things, but from a super academic or insider speak way of talking about it. So that's one of our big goals of this program. So today, to build on that as well, I am not here to give you a huge, big, long United Nations Framework and Convention on Climate Change 101. I'm here more to just introduce, what is this program and how can you apply for it or share it with the folks this opportunity with the folks you work with. To just kick that off, so we understand what the heck this COP thing is, for those of you that have been like, okay, I'm here because I'm interested, I don't really know what this is all about. That's okay. Don't feel shy about not knowing that. In 1994, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change came into force, and as it was recognized that climate change was something that needed to be addressed, and that it was an international problem, and that we needed to have countries around the world working together on it. And so 197 countries, those are sometimes, you will hear them called parties, and that's what COP stands for, Conference of the Parties. So those parties are conferences, are actually countries, have ratified this convention. So they joined in on that convention. And the ultimate goal is to stabilize greenhouse gas emissions at a level that would prevent dangerous human-induced interference with the climate system. And so that's a really big, far-reaching goal. And to achieve this goal, there are meetings held throughout the year between the parties. If you want to back, actually, I'm not quite there yet, Lauren. There's meetings held throughout the year between the parties, but the biggest one is the COP, so the Conference of the Parties, when all the parties who have signed on to that convention come together to take stock in where they are and to make commitments. And some years these conferences are much more focused on a really big decision, and some years they're focused more on the work that needs to get done. The last big decision-making COP was in Paris, COP21, where the Paris Agreement was agreed to. And this was a huge, big step for international climate policy, because it was the first time that 194, somewhere between 194 and 196, it depends on the year. And now that the US is going back in, I'm not really sure, but parties actually made commitments about how they would decrease their greenhouse gas emissions and signed on to that commitment. It was the very first time this had happened. And this COP this year is about us coming back together to finalize the rule book, like how do we get all this figured out, and also make bigger commitments, so to actually decrease emissions more. And actually, Lauren, sorry, you could go to the next one. that is one of the biggest pieces. Another thing just to point out from this list of things that was really a big deal was for many years, we had made a global commitment to not allow the global temperatures to exceed 2 degrees above average. But at the Paris Agreement, we actually decided that 1.5 was better. And that was due to the influence of people that were there that were not just these high-level negotiators, but these small island nations and young people and people around the globe that said 2 degrees is too high. Islands go underwater at 2 degrees. We need to stick to 1.5. So these are some of the other pieces. Like I said, I'm not going to go deep into what those are this year. We will be elaborating more on these things through our communications when we get closer to COP. So you can move ahead. So you probably have seen that we are asking that folks that apply for this year's delegation focus on ACE. So I know I promised that this wasn't all about wonky high-level policy stuff, but this is indeed something that you might call that, but it actually is pretty simple, at least for folks like us at Climate Generation, whose all of the work we do is focused on education and engagement, getting the public participating, getting the public aware of this issue, inspiring students and teachers to teach about climate change. And these are all things, this is ACE. This is the work of ACE. ACE is education, training, public awareness, public access to information, public participation, and coordination of networks, recognizing that these elements are critical to accelerate climate action. We can't just put in renewable energy policy. We can't just adapt to this issue. We actually have to be including the public and including education and preparing workers and all of these things to actually make this happen. Lawrence, if you want to go ahead. So we know, obviously, because we work in this realm, that this is important. It actually isn't just, we're not just pulling this out of nowhere. ACE is actually something that is part of this convention. It's mentioned in Article 6. So there's articles of these conventions, like chapters of the original convention and Article 12. And it is actually said that this is a critical piece of our commitments and of how we need to be doing and accelerating climate action around the globe. Why do we want to focus on this? Although this is in words, this is not necessarily being done around the world. There isn't financing behind these initiatives. There isn't necessarily major commitments, but there is growing interest and there's growing commitment. In many countries around the world, there's an actual, what they call focal point. So someone who's in charge of ACE. And the US just for the very first time named 2 ACE focal points. So people who are in charge of actually helping coordinate and work on that around the world. And we're excited to be really great partners with one of those focal points, and they will be a big part of helping us out and connecting with our delegation. If you want to move ahead. One of the pieces about ACE that we are really especially interested in is thinking about how ACE has a focus on justice and centering people. And so some of our partners who are working on ACE here in the US just recently drafted a paper, which is linked here below. For those of you that want to read it, I can send it, but that really highlight how do we make sure that we're actually implementing ACE in a just way, with a focus on broadening participation, making sure that when governments are putting these policies into place, everyone is involved with these efforts, that everyone is providing feedback, that there's participation in actual implementation, that the voices that are most important or most impacted are actually centered in that. When we're talking about accelerating climate action, we need to be working in relationship across different communities in collaborative ways, building on networks. When we look at designing the work of ACE, so education and training, we need to be inviting people in and looking for ways that we're bringing in many different issues that are intersecting and when worked on together, really accelerate and propel action forward. ACE work should be based on building very coherent, connected, supportive learning systems and focused on collaboration. And that's done by building multiple social connections, which is one of the things we aim to do through just this delegation in and of itself. And then finally, we need to know that ACE efforts aren't just building knowledge, awareness, and engagement, but they're also directly connected to action. So we're not just building awareness, but we're actually connecting to action. That's action-oriented learning. So this is something we think is really important when we're thinking about this. And it's also something that we'll be looking for in applications from our delegates too, of folks that are thinking about work in this way. If you want to pop ahead. Our work, this year's delegation, we're working in partnership as part of the Power Climate Action campaign. This is a campaign that's focused on ACE at an international level. So our delegation and our communications will be connected to folks around the world that are thinking about ACE and actually propelling it and focusing on it at COP. And then finally, we just wanted to point out some action that's just going on right now. The G20 summit is about to begin, and a huge coalition of organizations from around the world have asked that all of the education ministers that are there understand the importance of climate change education and focusing on that as we move towards COP as well. And this is something that's cool to look up. And so at this point, I'm going to move on to Sarah, who's going to get into a little bit on what happens at COP.
Thank you, Kristen. Hi again, everyone. So I'll share this part since I was with our most recent delegation. So you can kind of get an idea and a picture of what your role will be at COP. So this is the inside of the negotiating space, which I did not see at all because there's so much happening at COP and so many other ways to spend your time and build those networks. So first of all, in the next slide, you can see just a huge range of different kinds of people who will attend COP. So you have, government officials who are part of the negotiating process. We can send these out so you can zoom in on what all these are. You have reporters, media are allowed, and we are part of the big yellow area of observers. And so we're just part of the public community who is present to hold our negotiators accountable. But we're also able to build connections with one another, with people from around the world doing incredible work. So you'll hear, on different research, you'll hear about different models, different projects, and different ways to stand in solidarity with people around the world in fighting for climate justice. And so again, in the next slide, you can see our official badges in the yellow observer section will let you into the negotiations and give you different kinds of access. We also are able to, I'll get into that later, sorry. So this year we'll be in Glasgow, Scotland. So this is the location where the negotiations will be held. And then inside, we have different booths and exhibits. So like I said, this is a great space to meet other people throughout the day. Like every single hour is just absolutely packed with 50 different things to do, people to learn from. All of this information is public. There are massive agendas to follow. And again, because we are part of these great networks, you're able to get insight on, you know, the hot tips of where is a really exciting partner going to be speaking that you want to check out. What are some of the different specific interest areas that you're looking for different models to bring back or ways to share what you're working on here. So you have events and exhibitions throughout the day. This is a government leadership panel, but you'll have one of my favorite panels that I was attending was an entire panel of Indigenous leaders. It just runs the gamut. There are business panels. There are any variety of people trying to work on climate solutions that will be sharing their own approaches, since it takes us all doing that together to move forward. And there are different actions. So there are sanctioned actions that are just happening in public spaces. There are also unsanctioned actions, which climate generation delegates are not allowed to participate in, as you can get your badge removed. And we actually did have someone caught up in one last year, and shout out to Eric for helping to get her badge back, since we weren't actually part of that. But it was really exciting to be able to bear witness and to support a lot of partners who are taking action to continue to demand that our negotiators keep working harder. And then we'll also, because of our engagement with other coalition partners such as the Climate Action Network International and others, and the ACE focal points, we actually have a lot of unique access to our own negotiators in the US. And we were able to meet with folks and understand kind of what's going into their thought process and provide recommendations with our other partners on things that we expect our country to represent for us. So again, this is back in Glasgow. They're already preparing for negotiations. When I was in Madrid, you know, there was COP paraphernalia across the entire city. And I expect that it will be similar for Glasgow. And, you know, you'll just be on the train or be getting coffee somewhere and meeting people who are part of COP in different ways and just sparking conversations. That's just fantastic and fascinating.
Thanks, Sarah. Great. Well, I'm going to dig into just the logistics of this, and just to set a tone of now we've gotten you all excited about going to Glasgow and how it's going to be so exciting. But as you all, I'm sure, are very aware, we are still in a wait and see mode with what actually will be happening this in November as far as COP participation. It seems pretty likely that all negotiators will be going to Glasgow to be doing the work. It is less clear how observers will be able to participate. At this point in time, to go to the UK, there's actually a 10-day quarantine period, which if that was still in place in November, that just simply would not work with our scheduling. And there's also just maybe they may decide that observers will only be able to participate digitally in some sort of format in that way. So that is the caveat. And I'm sure we've all just been through over a year of being flexible and responsive to changes as they come, and we're still in that mode. And also, I will just name, I'm very conscious of the privilege that we all hold to all, I'm sure, be have at least had the option to be vaccinated at this point, whereas many of those 197 parties to the convention have not had that option yet. And so if negotiations are to be truly equitable and people and human-centered, we need to be really aware of that. With that said, as we plan for COP, we have established our sort of loose framework of what we expect will happen. So regardless of if COP is held digitally or in person, if you are selected as a delegate, you will be working with us to develop your climate story and how it ties to ACE. At Climate Generation, we do a lot of work on storytelling and helping people develop personal narrative as a tool for engaging others in action. And so that will be a kind of your first task of action with us. We'll be developing short videos that highlight these stories. We'll be asking that you share that you will be a delegate. We'll be developing press releases and social media around that. And we'll be doing a pre-COP webinar hosted by Climate Generation, where we introduce all of our delegates. And so that's what we're expecting with the pre-COP, regardless of where we are as far as negotiations. So if COP is live, it is in Glasgow, we will be selecting 6 delegates total, 3 delegates the first week and 3 delegates the second week of COP. The way that these observation things work, we are an accredited institution, NGO, for COP as an observer. We do not know how many badges that we will receive, oftentimes until very shortly before COP. What that means is if you are selected as a delegate, it is possible you will not have a badge to go to COP. The experience is amazing regardless. And we, as Sarah was sharing, there's the high level blue zone where there's negotiations happening and there's booths and things, but beyond that blue zone, there's something called the green zone, which anyone is able to enter, as well as millions of activities that are happening throughout the city of Glasgow. And so, as well as all the people that are going in and out of the blue zone, you're able to access and talk to. It's like a big, I'm an introvert and I talk to a million people there. So it's just an experience that, like, I promise you regardless. But if this is an issue for you, you know, then it's something that you will have to understand, is part of the process of COP. We start each day with a team meeting with all our delegates and the staff, Climate Generation staff that are there, to talk about daily goals, themes, roles. Each delegate will be responsible for either being a photographer, a video, or a person or a blogger each day. You'll be kind of switching in and out of different roles because at the end of each day, we create a digest that is mailed out to subscribers. You'll be attending presentations. We usually are able to set up a discussion with a guest that could be the US ACE focal point. It could be the president of Mozambique, and I'm actually quite serious about that. That is someone we met with when I was in Paris. So you never know who you're going to meet or be able to meet up with when you're at these things. You'll be providing at least one webinar back from the COP. There's often the possibility of speaking on a panel. We have good partnership with formerly, we are still in, I think, I forget what they're calling themselves now. We are in, because we're in, but to speak on a panel, as well as there's a high likelihood that there will be a booth at this year that's focused specifically on ACE. So there'll be some good networking and possible presentation opportunities there. You'll be using social media to share out and then submitting that blog content assignment by 9 p.m. And that's what a day in the life is. And I will just say that it's very difficult to nail down anything with COP. We're always very clear that we have loose schedules, but like you could find out that you've been invited to Al Gore's reception, and that's where all of a sudden you're going in 5 minutes, or all the Indigenous leaders from Canada are meeting and you've been invited to observe their meeting, or, you know, so it's just one of those things where you go and you go with the flow of learning and observing and participating. Lauren, you can go to the next one. If COP goes digital, this is a growing, there's one thing that is a positive about this is if COP is digital as far as engagement, that means that all the observers are engaging digitally, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities to connect with folks around the world. I know it's not Glasgow, I know it's not traveling, but it still will be a really valuable and interesting opportunity. In this instance, we're thinking that we will ask delegates to work every other day. So you'll be on 3 days, probably, whichever week that you're on. We'll still meet in a team meeting. We'll still be helping you find and connecting you with presentations, interviews with people from around the world. There'll still be webinars and sharing out. Because you're on Central Time, your blog assignment will be due at 3 that day instead of 9 p.m. in Glasgow. But this is a developing program, obviously, but we feel really confident that we'll be able to do something really cool because, like I said, everyone who is an observer will have to be engaging this way. And it's really important that folks like us are actually having our voices still heard and included in these processes. So it's still just as important. Lauren, you want to go? And then following up on COP, we will have, you know, a post blog and a panel online of just reflections of how COP went. And obviously we'd love to stay engaged with you. We find that the folks that are COP delegates for us are our most longest standing connecting folks. And that's just even here on this webinar, I see a large number of you that have visited with us, have been a COP delegate for us before. So we're really psyched to see you. Lauren, so what do you get? What do we provide? Accreditation as an observer to at least 1 delegate per week. Like I said, we have no idea how many spots we're going to get. We've gotten anywhere from 1 to, I think we got 4 or 1 year. It's possible we may be able to pick some up from other folks as well, but accreditation, we have secured lodging in Glasgow already, which was a real boom because lodging is completely gone already in the city. And so there will be shared lodging that we are paying for, and that's covered, and it's an apartment in Glasgow that's actually 20 to 40 minute walk to the Scotland, to the stadium. But there's also free transport and stuff too. We have asked folks to name if they need travel support. We are able to provide up to $1,500 travel stipend, which will need to be used for your flight and for food and time when you're there. But it should be adequate if to cover flight and food, I would, for that amount of time. And we will also be providing a stipend for our digital delegates, just recognizing that this is time that you are committing to this as well. So although you're not spending money on travel, is time. Every COP delegation, folks get jackets. They're red jackets. And we have actually really developed a presence at the COPs. People know these red jackets now and recognize that Minnesota often has a very large delegation there. So beyond the folks from Climate Gen, there's often a lot of other NGOs and universities that send delegations to the COP. Training and story coaching, networking opportunities, media coverage, staff support, and Sarah mentioned this, but we are a member of the Climate Action Network, which is a really great thing because they do daily briefings that are only accessible to membership. They also have their own listserv that's connecting folks to opportunities throughout the day. So it's a really nice thing, and you only can access those if you have a Climate Generation badge. Couple testimonials from folks that have gone with us before. A teacher that joined us in COP21 said it was the most powerfully transformative professional development experience of the year. People often comment about how great it is to be there as part of a delegation and a group that's been coordinated, because otherwise you kind of get a little bit lost. There can be anywhere from 10 to 40,000 people at these things. And it's like the hugest conference you've ever been to times 500. So it's a great, to be part of a group and have people to connect with. We'll be accepting applications through June 30th, and then in July reviewing and selecting folks to do application interviews, and then announcing our delegates by August 6th. I know the timing on this seems maybe a little bit close to November, but as far as we're still waiting just to see what's happening. And we also are pretty, right now, even getting a flight to the UK is really not recommended in general anyways. They haven't really opened up a lot of international flights. So this is one of those things where we're asking for flexibility, and hopefully by August, we'll have a sense of maybe how many spots we get from COP, from the UN as well. So this is when we'll be doing that. Lauren, if you want to go to the next group. So we'll be, as I mentioned, if it's COP is live, we'll be selecting 6 delegates. And we're really looking at people that are in some way focused on an element of ACE. Centering justice is a high value for us. That they represent the diverse experiences across the Midwest. Due to our funding, we are fairly limited to the Midwest as our selection area. There is some flexibility there. So if you aren't in the Midwest, please go ahead and apply. We're still just looking at how many come in, but we are looking primarily at the Midwest. And that you're someone that's really effective and creative about communicating and thinking about how to communicate, because that's really what this is about communicating with people one-on-one in terms of how you your emphasis on ACE and on climate communication, focusing, and then also communicating to like a large audience through our digest, through webinars, and through other areas. And then if COP is digital, we're thinking we'll likely select a larger number of delegates, so probably 5 per week. This is another reason why we're kind of waiting till August, because we may not know until late July even if COP is digital or not. And of course, I'll just say finally, we may not know, we may know, and then they may change again because we don't know what's happening in the fall. So I hate to be that way, but as I'm sure we all are used to this climate we're in, as far as we're still monitoring COVID, we're still seeing what happens when we take off the masks and all those things. So that is, my blabbering is done. If you do have a question, feel free to write it in the chat. We could also open up for folks if they want to raise hands. Choosing alternates as well. Yes, I believe we will be doing some alternates as well. Great question. Thanks, Michael. So yeah, Sarah, I know you're a teacher. So the 1 week, so usually delegates should plan on missing 1 work week if you work Monday through Friday. The way COP is usually broken up is that badges are given for the first week and the second week of COP. And so the first week is November, is it Lauren, 1st through 7th or something. And the second week is like the 8th through the 14th. So one of those weeks. Any other, what would be the most important quality for a delegate to have? Oh gosh. That I think the communication skills is a really important thing, that you're someone that can like clearly articulate why you're excited about this, how the work you do you think contributes to education, training, public participation, public awareness, any of those things that are listed in ACE, and what you hope to, what voice you hope to really bring to the negotiations. Yeah. Thanks, good question. Any other questions? No, people are raising real hands, or I can't see everyone, but. Oh, Reed. Reed, how do I unmute Reed? Can you unmute Reed? There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm really excited to support the delegation however I can. And I'm wondering, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in this for people who aren't selected or might not want to go. What ways are you planning on engaging with them to kind of increase the ripple effect of, you know what I mean? Because we have 25 people on this call. Mm-hmm. And it'd be great if everyone could be involved in some way to kind of create a larger ripple effect from whatever happens there. Just curious what ideas you have on that.
Yeah, do you have some, Reed?
Well,
no, I think that's an excellent question.
I do, but I'm curious to see what you.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think that right now we haven't even had a chance to think that deeply into that piece, sure. Just because there's so much like uncertainty with the way they're rolling. But I do think I would love to follow up with you on any ideas that you have around that as well. Yeah. But I think just simply having folks join us for different information, that they're, informational webinars. If people are really interested in volunteering their time to like submit blogs or reflections or any of that, that would all be welcome. And so I think developing something around that is a great idea. And Reed, follow up with me and let's chat about other ideas you might have too. So yeah. And Barbara asked what other opportunities besides COP are available after. That's also, so we didn't talk much just about from like a climate gen perspective, depending on what, sector that you work in. We have a pretty robust teacher network that is supported year round, as well as a youth network here. We do a lot of community engagement opportunities and have been trying to nurture a climate generation like ambassador force that's available to do presentations for us, and through a small stipend and things like that. So from like a Climate Gen level, there's that. I will say from like a COP level, I don't know if anyone here has anything that's been a delegate has things that have been ripple effects from the COP, but I know that the follow-up from these experiences is very personal, but very unique. We had, when I went to Paris with 10 teachers, and was the teachers that were there came back and they were like completely transformed as far as their interest in like, how can I as a teacher take action, and really focused on the idea of divestment, which was kind of emerging more and more at that point. They learned about what divestment was at COP. They learned that their teacher, their retirement funds were still held by the state, and those funds were invested in fossil fuel companies, and so really started working on like engaging with folks around that. And that was sort of like an opportunity that presented itself through some folks they met there that they could follow up with. So the ripple effects from the experience, I mean, you might meet with someone from somewhere else that it's just, I can't even tell you what it would be from a COP perspective, because there's a million directions that could go. Any other questions that folks have? Appreciate your time here today. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any. If there is the agenda for COP. So there is a COP26 landing page that I could dig up and post here. And the agenda for COP usually isn't even posted until, Lauren, isn't it like the day before? It's like, I mean, it is not, there's high level agenda you'll see, and then it starts boiling down into more and more pieces. And then those agendas branch out into sub-agendas, and there's the agenda of the official negotiations. There's the agenda of the like people's COP that's there's a million different things. They do tend to have theme days that post earlier, like Women's Day or Youth Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. So yeah, there has been an app for COP that usually pops up. I don't think it's out there yet, Eric, because I was searching for it the other day. Who's involved in the interview process? That will be probably the folks you're seeing here, maybe one other staff member from Climate Gen. All right. Well, I really appreciate you all coming. Please follow up with any questions you might have, and share this with other folks. We will be sending this recording out to people that registered. So please feel free to share that as well. And we look forward to seeing your application.